How's the royal family? I pray that everyone is doing well. Well, my royal family, I was in deep thought all last night um, about all this drama that has happened in the last 14 days. Seemed like a lifetime. And we can clearly see we're literally on the brink of war. And the royal family has clearly went directly to Donald Trump to let his crazy ass know we're not fighting your war at all. Not one damn bit. Now, I have something up on Anchor. So once you listen to this video, go to Anchor and you'll hear the rest of it, my royal family. But right now, we're dealing with this. So, anyhow, we have fought, our ancestors have fought in many of Esau's war. And the only thing that we got in return is a slap in the face. That is it, and that is all. And that's what they're going to continue to do. It doesn't matter how much we support the enemy, showing that we are fair, balanced, and objective. I say that often. And so, also, it is resonating globally that this country has absolutely no support. Only Israel, because Israel is beholding to America. So they came back away. So I started researching some things, and I ran up on this real powerful video that was done June the 24th, 2019, that will enlighten us even deeper. But before we get into that, this fool, Trump, wants to continue to escalate shit. These people are not playing at all. Trump, you want to be about that life? They're going to show you what it means to be about that life. So, let's hear the newest rhetoric.
The Trump administration is walking back its initial reasoning for killing Iranian commander Qasem Soleimani. President Trump says, quote, "It doesn't really matter if
we on the janky tip?
Soleimani posed an imminent threat to U.S. troops and diplomats in the Middle East."
And now, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says Soleimani's targeted killing was part of a broader strategy to combat worldwide threats. He spoke yesterday at Stanford University and addressed the controversy.
There's no terrorist except Osama bin Laden who has more American blood on his hands than did Qasem Soleimani. They killed more than 600 of our American patriots. I knew some of these young men. He's the mastermind of the most recent attacks against U.S. forces in Iraq, including the mastermind of the attack that took place that killed an American on December 27th of the year past. We now enjoy a great position of strength regarding Iran. It's as good as it has ever been, and Iran has never been in the place that it is today. We have reestablished deterrence, but we know it's not everlasting, that risk remains. We are determined not to lose that deterrence. In all cases, we have to do this. We have to do this to defend freedom and liberty around the world. That's the whole point of President Trump's work, to make our military the strongest it's ever been.
All right, for more on this, let's bring in CBS News State Department and Foreign Affairs reporter Christina Ruffini. She's joining us from Washington. So, Christina, what are your sources telling you about the latest developments here and the inconsistencies surrounding the president's reasons for ordering the strike on Soleimani? Have we been able to confirm that there was an actual threat against U.S. embassies and troops in the Middle East? I know Mark Esper told Margaret Brennan on Sunday he wasn't aware of any intelligence with regards to those 4 embassies that the president mentioned on Fox.
Right. We went about 9 rounds on this yesterday with senior State Department officials. They said, yes, there was a specific credible threat that included embassies in the region. But we knew that. There has been a heightened state of alert in the Mideast since April-May, the first time tensions with Iran flared up. So there was already this general elevated security risk to U.S. facilities, including military installations and, yes, embassies. Yesterday, at that same speech you just saw, Secretary Pompeo said it was at least 4 embassies that were in the crosshairs, at least, meaning it could have been more. The president, as you mentioned, said specifically 4. And again, as you mentioned, the Secretary of Defense, talking to Margaret Brennan on Sunday, said he did not see specific information that cited 4 embassies, but later walked that back in a written statement saying embassies were at risk. Confused yet? Adding to that muddled messaging, CBS News has reported that U.S. embassies were not notified of an additional imminent threat in the days and weeks leading up to the Soleimani strike. The State Department now disputes that and said they sent out a worldwide alert to the regional security officers at those embassies. I asked yesterday when that alert went out, before or after the killing of Soleimani, and I got no response.
Okay, to add to the confusion surrounding this whole thing, the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo also spoke yesterday about the future of American troops in Iraq. And of course, this comes after the Iraqi parliament voted to expel, non-binding resolution, but to expel U.S. forces from the country. And then there was this weird conversation where the Prime Minister said that he had spoken to the Secretary of State and asked about developing a plan for troops to leave. The Secretary of State said that that conversation was mischaracterized. Christina, where are we on U.S. troops in Iraq?
Well, thanks to the student at this, he gave a speech at Stanford yesterday, and this was a question asked by one of the students who said, did Soleimani manage to achieve in death what he hadn't in life, which is the removal of U.S. troops from Iraq? And the secretary said, basically, we're working on it. We're working with the duly elected government of Iraq to figure something out. But he also said that the Iraqi officials are saying something different in private than they are in public, and that behind closed doors, they've told American officials they welcome the anti-terror campaign and the mission to train Iraqi forces. And the truth is, the government in Baghdad will have a very hard time keeping control without a U.S. presence. They also cannot fight ISIS successfully without U.S. support. And Iran, which has already exerted, as we've seen, a lot of influence in the country, is just waiting to fill the kind of power vacuum a U.S. withdrawal would create, and the Iraqis know that.
Christina, we've also learned Britain, France, and Germany took the first steps towards reimposing sanctions on Iran. They're trying to force the country back into abiding by the 2015 nuclear deal. What's the significance of that?
Yeah, this was interesting because just yesterday, that same group had sent out a statement urging Iran to come back into compliance. Then in the early hours of this morning, U.S. time anyway, they sent a second statement saying that given Iran's actions, now Iran has said it's going to turn on more of those centrifuges, which is not allowed under the agreement. This group said they're officially lodging what is basically a grievance. According to Margaret Brennan, who's covered this deal extensively when it was being hammered out, Iran now has 60 days to explain itself and settle that dispute, or all the international sanctions that were on hold will snap back into place. And that's what they're called. They're called snapback sanctions. Up until now, the Europeans have been so committed, almost desperate to keep this deal together. They've basically turned a blind eye when Iran started really pressing the limits of what was allowed under the JCPOA. But now it looks like France, Germany, and the UK have said enough is enough. Fix it, or this deal is officially done.
All right, Christina Ruffini for us in D.C. Christina, thank you very much.
Wow.
Thank you, guys.
That ain't that
Will hold 2020's.
What's the trip is Trump broke the damn treaty agreement, and then they want to put pressure on Iran. This motherfucker, he ain't no damn good. And so him and his partner gonna double down on the lie, because the man is dead now and he can't speak for himself, and they gonna make him bigger than what he is and all of that. Trump committed a war crime, my royal family. He killed a general. Do y'all fully understand what's going on in this war, Esau? What's going to happen to him, he's going to be limited in where he can travel. And there's a lot of politicians like that they done did so much dirt across the pond, they get caught in certain areas they will lock their ass up. And there was a space and time they would just blow your brains out. This fool got a target on him. And this is a game to him because he don't think it's a problem lying. In fact, I heard today that he said, so what if I lie? Pretty much. I don't know if the words were verbatim, but it was somewhere around that. I'm not going to lie on him. I don't have to. You know? Nobody has to lie on this fool. But as we continue on my royal family, I have this lengthy video that I want y'all to watch. Again, June 24th, 2019. And it says U.S. war with Iran. What a war with Iran could look like. This is some deep stuff they was talking on this. All right, my royal family. Check this out.
Tensions between Washington and Tehran are once again at their peak after 2 oil tankers were attacked on June 13th near the entrance to the Persian Gulf. The incidents were the second in a month, and U.S. officials were quick to blame Iran but cited no proof. Iran meanwhile denied any wrongdoing. Although it's unclear what exactly happened, the event has stoked fears that a military confrontation between Iran and the United States is imminent. Truth, however, is the first casualty of war, and so it matters little what truly happened. Yet miscalculation, misinterpretation, and bad judgment can conspire to turn a minor clash into a full-blown fight. What we want to know is how a hypothetical conflict between Iran and the United States would play out. I'm your host Shirvan, and welcome to Caspian Report. Cybersecurity is a growing concern that affects not only government institutions but also individuals. You can secure your devices with NordVPN, which has more than 5,000 servers in 62 countries and thus uses double data encryption for increased anonymity. Plus, since the company is registered in Panama, there are no data logging regulations. So, if you've been thinking about cybersecurity and privacy, just go to nordvpn.com/CaspianReport or use the link in the description. You'll get a 70% discount on the 3-year plan. And if you use the promo code Caspian Report, you'll get an additional month for free. Now back to our thought experiment. The most relevant precedent for an American-Iranian conflict was the Millennium Challenge 2002 war game, which pitted the United States against Iran. It was the largest exercise of its kind, racking up a total cost of roughly $250 million and involving some 13,500 participants with numerous live training sites. 2 days into the simulation, the Iranian team sent 19 US ships, including 1 aircraft carrier, to the bottom of the Persian Gulf. In real life, it would have resulted in the deaths of about 20,000 American troops. What happened was that the general leading the Iranian team adopted an asymmetric strategy and used old methods to evade the American surveillance network, such as motorcycle messengers, camouflaged civilian boats, kamikaze speedboats, coded messages, etc. The war game was meant to test future military technologies, but ended in humiliation. So much so that the exercise was reset, with new rules of engagement being rigged in favor of the Americans. As the authentic war game became a scripted event, the leader of the Iranian team resigned, claiming that the purpose of the war game was to reinforce existing notions of American supremacy rather than serving as a learning experience. The Millennium Challenge is a reminder that no plan survives first contact with the enemy, and miscalculation is just around the corner. The most likely cause for an American-Iranian war would be by small deniable attacks. Both sides could start such provocations. Imagine the Shia militias in Iraq with close connections to the Iranian security apparatus targeting US military convoys and killing several American troops. From experience, Tehran knows that such minor attacks do not result in direct retaliation from Washington, provided they are deniable. For instance, the US Defense Department estimates that From 2003 to 2011, a little more than 600 American troops were killed by Iranian proxies in Iraq. These kinds of small, deniable attacks are of little consequence. It is only when politicians decide to push ahead with political goals that such events are used to justify actions. In our imaginary scenario, the United States sends aircraft carriers, battleships, long-range bombers, and missile batteries to the Persian Gulf to reassure its allies. An additional 120,000 troops are deployed to the American bases in the Middle East, a figure that is close to the invasion of Iraq in 2003. Not surprisingly, the Iranians perceive the maneuver as a signal that Trump is gearing up for a widespread attack. Tehran responds by moving its missiles and naval mines out of storage and dispersing them. Although neither side wants a fight, and both parties are merely seeking to defend their interests from an attack by the other, the climate of mutual mistrust and the pressure of time leads to misunderstanding. Add to this Trump's tendency to go off on Twitter, and we have a recipe where a slight attack can ignite severe retaliation. As was the case in the Millennium Challenge 2002 wargame, Iran's best defense is an immediate and devastating preemptive strike. Knowing this, the Americans decide to preempt Iran's preemptive strike. As such, the Pentagon uses its existing air and naval assets in the Middle East to hit ports, ships, and training facilities along the Iranian coast. The operation largely resembles the US airstrikes in Syria in 2017 and 2018, limited to a few dozen sorties. Immediately after the attack, Trump communicates through public channels that the incursion was a one-time strike and that if Iran backs down, there will be no further consequences. Ideally, the Iranian leadership pulls back and things end there. But this time it's different. President Rouhani's political opponents bash him for being weak while his approval ratings take a nosedive. He is forced to act and illustrate his resolve. To do so, the Iranian leadership has a wide range of options, from proxy forces in Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Lebanon, and Afghanistan to ballistic missiles that can target American outposts and bases in Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates. Meanwhile, in the realm of cyberspace, the Iranian paramilitary goods force can sabotage and shut down a significant portion of Saudi oil production. Finally, in the Persian Gulf, Iranian anti-ship missiles, kamikaze speedboats, and sophisticated naval mines can wreak havoc in the Strait of Hormuz, through which about 40% of the world's seaborne oil passes. The slightest sense of panic would drive up global oil prices and disrupt the world economy, possibly even triggering the next recession. The point is, asymmetric warfare is the primary strength of the Iranians, and they know it. In our thought war game, Tehran decides to save face and retaliates by dropping a few dozen naval mines in the Persian Gulf and by commanding its proxies to target US troops, aid workers, and diplomats across the Middle East. With the number of dead Americans piling up, the Pentagon recommends going big. Bolton and Pompeo support the plan and convince Trump that it's the only viable course of action. As the logic of escalation conspires a minor clash into a regional blaze, US bombers hit conventional Iranian targets and destroy much of the country's nuclear infrastructure in Natanz, Esfahan, Arak, Fordow, etc. Still, Washington stops short of an all-out war. On the other side of the fence, however, the Iranians believe they are at full-out war and launch a powerful counterattack. The Strait of Hormuz is effectively closed off with hundreds of naval mines, while small Iranian kamikaze boats, drones, and a fleet of mini-subs deter and harass the American fleet in the Persian Gulf. As a countermeasure, the United States uses surface vessels for surveillance and reconnaissance to detect or eliminate the Iranian attacks. Nevertheless, some attacks and losses cannot be avoided. Likewise, the price of oil skyrockets to $150 per barrel and stagnates GDP growth worldwide. Having crossed the point of no return, Tehran launches as many missiles as it can at US military bases in the area over the next few days. At the same time, Iranian proxy militias target US troops in Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. while the proxy groups in Yemen launch a barrage of rockets against Saudi Arabia and overflow parts of the Red Sea with naval mines and thereby damages the trade passing through the Suez Canal. The global economy takes another beating. At some point, Israel gets drawn into the conflict and clashes with Hezbollah. Iran decides to raise the stakes for the United States by hitting Israel. As such, Tehran directs Hezbollah to attack Israel using its arsenal of some 130,000 rockets. The assault overwhelms Israel's Iron Dome missile system, leaving the Israelis with little choice but to invade southern Lebanon and even parts of Syria in order to eradicate Hezbollah's local strongholds. What began as a tit-for-tat now affects much of the Middle East. After weeks of US airstrikes with an average 1,200 strike sorties a day, the regular Iranian army is rendered inoperable, but the proxy groups are harder to terminate. As the fighting drags on, Israeli and Saudi lobbying groups in Washington call for the overthrow of the Iranian government. The situation is reminiscent of the assault on Libya in 2011, where the United States stumbled into a regime change operation and lacked a clear objective. This time, however, the scale is vastly larger. Iran turns out to be a whole different battle space. Nearly the entire country is mountainous, which raises the costs of an invasion into the trillions of dollars. This isn't even considering the destabilizing effects of a refugee crisis stemming from such destruction. As such, nobody in the White House advocates a large-scale occupation. The price is simply too costly. Instead, the US government tries to engineer the collapse of the Islamic Republic without having to invade it. Yet, unlike many of the other Middle Eastern nations, Iran is not an artificial creation of European colonialism, but an ancient civilization whose nationalism runs deep. Most of the 82 million citizens rally behind the Ayatollah's banner, including opposition groups. Even if somehow the religious government is cast out, the most likely faction to inherit the state would be the powerful Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, turning the country into a military dictatorship. At worst, a public uprising could lead to civil war and the Balkanization of Iran. Such destabilizing circumstances would create extremist safe havens as well as increase the flow of refugees to Europe. In all likelihood, the Iranian government remains in place as a weakened nation. And even though the US strikes on Iran's nuclear infrastructure have set the country back by several years, the conflict has convinced the Iranians to restart their nuclear program and take it further underground to construct an actual nuclear weapon, a goal it had thus far abated. On the whole, the United States would emerge victoriously, but not before tying itself down in yet another Middle Eastern conflict for decades to come. Such a long-term commitment would drain the resources of Washington while granting Russia and China a window of opportunity to revive a multipolar world. Thus, ironically, by winning the war in Iran, the United States is likely to lose its status as the world's sole superpower. Fortunately, all the involved parties understand the dangers and catastrophic fallout of a full-blown conflict, not least the Iranian government. For this reason, a fight between Washington and Tehran is unlikely to occur. However, the pressure of time, the climate of mistrust, the uncertainty of intelligence, and the presence of thousands of troops in the region leaves open the chance of misreading signals and miscommunication, which could conspire an insignificant act into a deadly collision with devastating results. I've been your host, Shirvan from
Okay,
Caspian
my royal
Report.
family.
Special thanks to our Patreon community for making content like this possible and enabling us to operate independently. If you want to join our community with all its...
All right, my royal family. I felt like it was absolutely necessary to see that video. And I'm going to tell you the first thing that came to mind. It was a statement that I made years ago to my husband. I said, never let a man know your strengths or weaknesses. Always keep them wondering. That's what resonated. And what, see, America is arrogant. And what those people did was they looked at their weaknesses. They looked at their strengths. They were they are being more realistic in saying, where do we need to tighten our game up? Where we weak at? Let's, it's like doing a self-assessment of self. Can you really critically look at thyself and say, I'm not too good in this area. You lean all on your strengths and everything and say, well, what can I do to really, deal with whatever, interpersonal battles that we have. And that's how I took it overall. Now, everybody else have their own interpretations. Y'all don't have to agree with me at all. But that is the first time I ever seen a country, let alone an individual, in their military, they wanted to, do some mock war games. And they studying themselves. They studying America. See, we don't know what they got or when they're going to execute. Let's put it that way. And you heard the ending part of this, my royal family, that because of this fool here who can't shut the fuck up and he's unstable, that they said, okay, he broke this shit. We're going to lose sight of that, being ornery because his issues with Obama. And then they come to the end. That's the part that I just don't agree with. And the distrust, I don't blame them. I would fire up my nuclear shit too. I would go for my power too. I ain't gonna be sitting up here being a lame ass duck. That's not an option. And you can't ask people to do that. And then this fool and his cronies want to run amok wherever they go, because anytime you see them show up, we know what comes up. Cap said it: death, destruction, deceit, disease. And it doesn't even matter the order. It don't even matter the order. And that is quite clever of them. Now, they did that. I don't know when they did that, but they presented the video, and that's just what they wanted to tell. They would be a fool to do what Trump and them doing and get all braggadocious, and I'm not trying to say Iran always make the best moves. They're human beings, just like so-called Trump and them. So they stumble and fall, and they even looking at how it would affect the economy on a global scale. They looking at all aspects of this. How is this going to affect, first our immediate situation, let alone down the road? That's like when you start a business. You have short-term goals and long-term goals, and you have, you try to meet all these benchmarks and everything. So they trying to stay game tight. Okay, now we in the present. And we at war, my royal family. Again, this fool had a general killed, one of their top ones. That's a war crime. Damn. And the arrogance of the enemy is truly amazing. But it is what it is, and we ain't surprised by it. But just to watch it in real time, you'd be like, damn, because we didn't see many things throughout our lives. And the other thing I wanted to bring up too is they are tracking and following Trump, how he reacts on Twitter. He has absolutely no control. See, Trump is a security breach. And what he is doing is making this country even more unstable. And this is the first time that I have recognized as an adult, and it could have been some other times with some other crazy ass presidents, that I can clearly see that all branches of the military could pull a coup on the government. Think about it, my royal family. Think about what fool is up there. And I've been looking at that way before this shit popped off. I had talked to some people behind the scenes about this. I said, check this out. All these moves he making. You the president, your ass on Twitter every damn day. And all somebody got to do is just, throw a little something out there. And he going to run to it. And he going to spew whatever he going to spew. So he's revealing his strengths and his weaknesses. He's revealing it. It is what it is. And he's cocky because he has this country so far protecting him. But Trump don't have no friends. Like I said, when these bodies start piling up and coming back and forth, and these families throughout the United States start protesting, calling these different politicians local offices and going the fuck off, then it's going to be something totally different. Then on top of that, it's like it's a pile on. Then as this thing continues to escalate, then it leaves the other countries no choice but to back their interests. They're not going to be in alignment with this fool. We all know he a fool. He don't think. He don't read. This motherfucker get on TV and Fox News and all whatever he watch, and that's how he figure shit out. You don't even try, Trump. You sloppy. You supposed to be leading America. You're doing a beautiful job on the world stage. And then all in turn, I showed y'all when I was on Lisa Kabir, one of her hangouts, where black Twitter drugged Trump about this, this impending war. And he retaliated back and said, he want us to stop, but that if they possibly do have a war, he gonna put us over there. And I read that to y'all, and some people thought that was fake. Go look it up yourself. Because I bring the receipts. I'm not just gonna tell y'all some shit off the cuff. Because people will do that, and make it look like somebody else did it. That was Trump that did it. So you want my people to go fight in your raggedy ass war. That's what you want our people to go do. Well, check this out, my royal family. Go to Anchor. I spit pure fire over there. Some things I had to say. And y'all can make the comment and go in the community section of my channel. And this, oh damn, I'm gonna have to do it that way because I want to put it on both channels. Because usually I say when I do my my anchors, I'm exclusively doing them on on my backup channel. But no, I'm just gonna put it on both channels. I want y'all to go over there and listen to it and everything. And I gotta make a more of a concerted effort because the people are supporting me over there to speak. And I have freedom over there because, I can be real sharp with the tongue and spit fire and bring that core truth that the enemy and the enemy supporters can't deal with like we always do. They can't handle these words that come from us because we're chosen. So anyway, my royal family, render your voice with your beautiful divine words. And as always, my royal family, I thank you for your love. I thank you for your support. And with that said, Ashe.